You're listening to the Brilliant Breakthroughs podcast with your host, Maggie Mogan.
Hi, small business owners. Welcome to the Brilliant Breakthroughs podcast, where we focus on creating brilliant breakthroughs for the small business owner. FYI, this is also the name of the #1 Amazon best-selling book for small business and entrepreneurship. The good news is you can find this book in paperback as well as ebook form. Just so you know which one it is on Amazon, type in Brilliant Breakthroughs for the Small Business Owner, and the subtitle is Fresh Perspectives on Profitability, People, Productivity, and Finding Peace in Your Business. Today's conversation is with a #1 best-selling business author from the 2018 book. And when you go to Amazon, please know that the 2018 book is the one with the emerald green cover. Hi, rock stars. My name is Maggie Mogan, and I'm the creator of the Brilliant Breakthroughs annual business book series. Wow, that's a lot of B's.
The big B's.
A #1 best-selling business author. My full-time gig, as some people like to say, is I'm a master business coach. I help small business owners transform their businesses to shine quite brightly. So today we're honored to have a 2018 author, by the way, #1 best-selling business author, Becky Norwood, with us to talk about your business's productivity in a very interesting way. So let's learn about how to utilize a tool, which we refer to as a book, and how that can help you build your business to become much more effective and efficient at attracting business. Welcome, Becky Norwood.
Thank you, Maggie. Thank you for having me here today. And along with your string of B's, I'm Becky B.
That's right, you're Becky B.
So I have a lot of B's going on.
Yeah, you're a busy bee.
Yeah, I am that.
Well, I'm so glad that you're here. And everyone, please know that Becky's chapter is the 5th one in the 2018 book, titled Spotlighting Yourself as an Undeniable Expert in Your Industry. Becky, you covered a lot of ground. You gave away a lot of secrets in your chapter, didn't you?
I did. And, there's so much more to even, way more than that to be said. There's only so much you can put in a chapter when your whole entire business of helping authors bring their work to the world covers so many things. And so we can only touch the little bits of things that really need to be spoken about. And one of the things that I have discovered that is, as we work with our authors, the first conversations we have with them when we meet for the first times is, what's the big picture and what's the why? And how do we put all this together? Because there's a lot to it's not for becoming an author is truly not for the faint of heart.
I agree with that. There's so much strategy behind how to write a book. So the overall message is purpose-driven, and it has impact for the reader in one fashion or another, right?
Right. It's, to me, when I look at it, because, you think of authors as people that are sitting behind their computers or tapping the keys on the keyboard, and that's all they do. They're not out there. They're just solitary creatures that just produces their work of heart and art. And that's not the way it is anymore, because we live in a very alive world, digital, with all the technology that's available to us, and authors can't be just behind their computers any longer. There has to be a lot of strategy that goes behind it, because there's so many books being published right now that their books anybody's book can be published, and nobody knows it exists.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
The days of the great authors, even the more modern, undeniable author of Stephen King, everybody has this perception that he's just buckled down in seclusion, which he sort of is, but but he also is involved with the marketing and even how to take his stories to film. As we know, so many of them have been miniseries on TVs or even movies.
Right.
So it's not just stopping there. It's how do you continue to get that message out there?
Well,
And
you know,
right.
Stephen King even has a messenger bot on Facebook.
Yes, most people have no clue about that, right?
So, you know, he understands marketing and what a valuable tool something like that is. So he's had to step up too, because there's too many books being published every day. You know, I think it's the stats that I read recently are 4,000 books being published every day in the United States.
I I think I saw some that said more.
I think I have two. I can't remember that stat, but that was the last time I did a lot of, okay, Google searches on how many books are being published. I know that it's probably higher because that's probably a year or two old since I made that, you know, did that research. And every day I meet people at events where I'm public speaking and doing, you know, maybe having a booth at events or networking. People in general are understanding the power of being a published author.
Yes.
And the key is that with the right strategies and the right everything that goes with it, your book will be found and it will be an excellent tool to help you grow your business. And, you know, even if you're a nonfiction writer, it's a business.
It is a business. And
Excuse me, I said that wrong. If you're a fiction writer, it's a business. No matter fiction or nonfiction, it doesn't matter. Children's book, it all is that you treat your book like it's a business. So there's a lot of key important things that go into all of this to really make it successful. Because, you know, when I first started publishing, the gentleman that taught about self-publishing and what a valuable tool this is, he made it sound like it was magic.
well, it sort of is.
It is magic. It is magic. But what I mean by that is if he was talking to a humongous audience when he first started broaching this, and this was some time ago when self-publishing was just becoming something that was available to us.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw many, many authors, including myself, jump in to this ability to publish our books ourselves and not have to go through traditional publishing. His books sold like wildfire. Why? He had 1 million followers, or he has many more by now. But you have to consider the audiences. Do you have any following already? If you don't, the minute you start writing, you need to be starting your social media. You need to be getting out there, getting exposed, networking, speaking, because you need to build a following of people that are going to support you. And what I found is that when I first started publishing for others, we do bestseller launches and it was amazing. And people were excited to become number one. But if we didn't put the strategies in place for how are they going to keep the marketing up, or they didn't choose to hire us, then they were coming back and saying, well, my book's not selling.
Right.
So that's why now as I work with authors, because I have over 200 authors now as at #1 bestseller, which is wonderful.
Woohoo! Congratulations to you. Just pause for a moment, everybody. Listen to that. Over 200 #1s. That's phenomenal. And that validates you know what you're speaking of.
I do. And it's been quite a few lessons, and every day is something more that I learn. And our strategy with our authors now is so different from when I first began, because the first words we talk about is not just their why, but their big picture and the thing, are they willing to do the work to to use this book as a tool, but do the marketing pieces that are going to serve them the best. And where is their audience? Is it Facebook? Is it LinkedIn? We strategize with that, because their book needs to be treated that way. Are they willing to get on podcast interviews, much like this one? Are they willing to get out on the stages and get out and network and choose key areas where they become speakers? And are they going to be active on social media? Are they going to do press releases? See, all these little things that are just so important to come together for this, because it's just publishing a book. They may be sadly disappointed unless they start building and becoming branded as an author and start building their sphere of influence, so to speak.
And I love that, what you're saying, because in the chapter you wrote, you address these different points, not to the full scale of what you can deliver, but you start to help guide people through those initial steps of this is, if you're interested in writing a book, because it is a leveraging tool for your business to attract your ideal customers. Where do you start? And you lay that out in the chapter really nicely. Obviously, you have so much more that you do. And full disclosure, everyone, Becky is the mentoring publisher for our book series that we're referencing here. So I believe in what Becky's saying. That's a fact. But you give us a nice way to start to think about maybe 10 different things to consider as we're like, geez, should we do a book? Shouldn't we do a book? What does it involve? And why would I want to do a book? And I think that's the big thing for business owners is, why do you want to do a book? Well, everybody's got a message. Everybody on the planet has a message. I believe we all have about 2 or 3 different messages. That's my belief. And if you want to write a book that is unrelated to what your business is, be prepared then that you'll be launching another business related to what your topic is, your message, right?
Very much, very much. And whatever if it's a memoir, it's still, or a biography type of book, there's still so much that goes into that. And even so, it starts with the why. We all heard Simon Sinek's interview, start with your why. Because if you don't have a deep enough and good enough why, you're not going to stick with all the things that need to be done. Because in writing a book, there's a lot goes into it, because it isn't just writing a bunch of facts. It's not about that. It's about weaving a powerful story.
Oh, okay. Pause for a moment.
Okay.
Please, because I want everybody to take that in. It's about weaving a powerful story. And even business owners have to communicate through story, right?
Very key. It's such a key. What makes them experts? How did they come to be an expert in the field that they're in? What life lessons did they have that brought them to be the experts that they are? Typically, it's something in their life that caused them to become the expert in their field. So when we look at this big picture of this, I spoke with the doctor yesterday that you introduced me to out of Albuquerque, Dr. Louise. Now, her story was that she got very, very ill, was very, very sick in her past. As she was beginning through her healing process, she started delving into, how do I heal from this? And that set her on a completely different course of life. Even though she had some background, she went way deeper and uses some of the most amazing techniques now. But it was based on that life experience of what happened to her with that very serious illness that has brought her to be in this place that she serves the world now. and her own special technique of helping people to heal from whether it's emotional or physical or whatever the thing is. But it was by use of her story and telling me that story that I understood her background and understood why she has the passion to work with people in the way she does. Each of us have a story, and I feel it's so incredibly important to bring those stories to the world, because from the beginning of time, storytelling has been used to teach through all cultures. There's been the storytellers, and the storytellers are what transport us into understanding the connections that we have, the lessons that we can learn. And it's been said, I did some research recently for a presentation I have coming up at a big event. And I was looking for a different way of expressing of the power of story. And I found so much that's out there. There's groups that are working with young people to get them to understand how to be a storyteller.
Oh,
There's groups of Native Americans that are going back into their communities and saying, we've lost the art of storytelling. Let's tell stories. Let's learn how to tell our stories again, because we have lost our connection with the world. And
yes.
storytelling, how many of us have ever got lost into just the whole storyline, whether it's even a business book, the storyline about what helped them to become that. We can transport us. For myself, I grew up in a terribly abusive family, and I never could make the direct connection. But when I wrote my book, The Woman I Love, I told the story about what happened and then what I've done in my healing process, how I was able to do that. What happened is many people responded to my book, thanked me for sharing the story, then went on to have the courage to tell their own story.
That's impact.
That's impact. That's what we, as human beings, we have that responsibility. And because of our digital technology that we have, where people are, I can go to a restaurant and I see an entire family sitting at the table and they're doing this. They're not communicating.
They're looking down at their phones.
Everybody is looking down, and the whole family, nobody's connecting.
Right.
So what happens with our society if we are not connecting with each other and using the power of story to make those connections? Because a short story about something that had a big impact on you can help. If it only helped one person to transform their lives because they realize for the first time they're not alone, that somebody else has had that issue and look what they did about it and look how they're living their lives, it can transport them into something completely different. But if we're not telling our stories and we're not weaving storytelling into our books, if we're not weaving storytelling into our marketing, then we don't make those connections. There's no flavor to it. There's no substance to what we're teaching unless we weave stories into it. So that's the key. You know, in any kind of book, we just did a children's book. It's a magnificent children's book, but it's for a woman. The woman that wrote it has worked with children's cardiologists. And she watches these children come in and they're scared to death of all these machines. They don't know what to think of it. The parents are paralyzed with fear because their child has a heart condition. They don't know what to think. So this simple little 35-page book, what she did with it was it's called The Heart of a Bear. And in this little book, she took them through to all the different stations they had to and explained the machines and what they did.
Oh, how brilliant is that?
She's marketing her book now to cardiologists and to the families. She's getting into schools. She's doing a lot of amazing things with this, but it's such a brilliant way. But what we did with that is we had her we created some videos for her, and we helped her. We did interviews, and every character in her book, like Dr. Fish, was an actual doctor she worked with. So she told those stories about this doctor and what she learned from that doctor and the different nurses that were in there. And what happened is the book came even more to life, because even though you don't put all that stuff into the book itself, it was a storyline for more designed for children and parents to understand what's happening to them. But it came to life by enlarging upon the story and telling the stories behind the story.
Right.
Which made it come to life. And so her book stayed top of the charts, #1 for 3 months. She's out there getting it into the hospitals and getting it into the bookstores and getting it into the right hands. And cardiologists she's got stickers to go with it. She's got, little bears to go with the book, and she sells them in a series. But what I'm trying to say is that it was the art of storytelling that's made this become something so valuable.
So what I find fascinating about what you've said a little earlier and now is fiction writers, the great novelists, need to understand that their book is a business, and conversely, business owners need to be able to understand that storytelling is the magic, okay, to having the book become very successful. So it's almost like we're crossing the streams into each other's realms of fiction versus nonfiction, and now understanding the power of how to bring it all together to really create the best product, what we call educational marketing asset, to your marketplace.
Very much. So if you think about it, if you're teaching somebody how to be a proficient public speaker, and you're just giving all the facts, that's all the book is about, is facts. And okay, this is how you do it, and this is how you stand, and this is how you start. And you don't weave any stories about storytelling or about your own experience of becoming a very good, your own journey, because most of us are not born storytelling in the way that we're talking about. So it was a process for that person to become a really good trainer on how to become a proficient, accomplished public speaker. But if all you gave was the facts, would people find that book interesting and want to pick it up?
Well, you're absolutely right on that, because even going back to how we learn, if we're just in the education system, if we're just given facts and we have to spew them out, which is really how we're taught, those facts leave us. But if there's a story behind it, it sticks. And case in point is world history. History is stories. If you look at it that way, or you look at it as facts. And one of the things that I did when I was in high school was I aced history, because I saw the stories to it. And that's what fascinated me, and who was connected to who and what they were doing and why they were doing it, going back to the why, because then you could understand what the character was doing to achieve whatever it is that brought them to a notable point of history. So I agree with what you're saying 100% related to that speaker going ahead and becoming a teacher, a guide to help somebody learn how to speak well. It's the stories that are going to try. You might not remember, I need to stay in the cage or whatever it is. But if you hear a story as to the power of staying in the cage or leaving the cage while you're presenting, all of a sudden it clicks and you never forget it.
Right.
And that's how we were taught. You're absolutely right. Oral tradition from the very beginning of history.
And if we don't use story, and if we set it aside, we don't make that connection. And I think the most important responsibility each one of us have to leave our footprint on the world and to create an impact for the world is to share our stories. Without story, we can't drive the point home. We can't make the heart connection. We can't make a true impact unless we're willing to be raw, pretty much be vulnerable, to say, I really failed in this area, or this is what really happened, and this is why I'm able to teach the way I'm teaching, and this is how the impact I want to make by sharing my story. And there's where the connections start, because we really live in a fast-paced world, and there's so many things that can distract us. And I see a lot of people that pretty much, they're glued to the technology part of it, but we need to use technology to our good, in the sense of, look at what we have available. It isn't just verbally in our families that we're telling stories. Now we can expand it out, and that's how we get that larger footprint on the world and make a difference.
I agree with you completely, and I'd love for us to crack this open more, but we're already
It's too fast.
But what I would like to just echo what you're saying, because when I started all my marketing, I was all about story. And because I serve the business sector, I was told to remove that and go hardcore training, because that's what business did. Well, guess what? That's a different type of business. Even storytelling now is infiltrating corporate training. And I just want everybody to understand the significance of story, because it's causing me to go back. I have enough training built out. Now I need to go back and infuse the stories that go with all of that. So it's challenging me, even with how solid my business is, to go back and add that other layer that is essential for us in our learning and our connection. It makes us relevant.
Mm-hmm.
And as Jake Naraki in our first book mentions, and he's a podcaster, he says, we live in a real world. We need to be raw and real, because that's where we are relevant.
Mm-hmm. Very much.
And that's what makes us all endearing, right?
Well, even for myself, I'm creating some courses to teach my authors some of the deeper steps of the marketing and all the pieces that go together. And one of the things that I see, it is just incredibly easy to just go right into, this is how you do it. Step 1, step 2, step 3. But if you don't give those little examples of with storytelling, then it's just a bunch of words on paper. But if you bring it to life with the storytelling, it changes it.
It does.
Because then they're able to see how it applies to them, and they make that connection. And maybe it's not exactly according to their life story, but there's nothing new under the sun.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Becky, I would love for us to continue this conversation. Are you game for that?
I'm game.
Okay. So before I jump into wrapping this up, I want to share with our listeners, if this is resonating with you right now, what Becky's saying, please go back and listen to our earlier episodes with Becky, episodes 61, 73, and 81. Again, 61, 73, and 81, because she shares different aspects of this. We're talking about authoring your book. And if you want to know more, that's where you start the journey with Becky's wisdom, besides obviously reading the chapter, which we'll talk about in a moment again. So these podcasts complement and supplement what Becky wrote in chapter 5 in our 2018 book. Thank you, Becky.
And thank you. I really admire you for the work that you're doing.
Thanks. It's important. It's a message, right?
It is.
So listeners, This is how you can learn more and engage with #1 best-selling business author Becky Norwood. Start by reading chapter 5 in the book, and that's Brilliant Breakthroughs for the Small Business Owner, Volume 2, the emerald green color. And also go to, at the end of the chapter, there's an author page and explains all about Becky. But at the bottom of it, she has a special invitation for you to go ahead and engage further with her. So you might want to go ahead and take advantage of that. It's free, and she's waiting for you to learn a little bit more about what this game is really all about. Plus, at the end of the chapter, she also has all her different social media handles, so you connect with her and can follow her there as well. Here's something else that's really cool. Right now, you can see everything about the book as well as the podcast and how to get a hold of Becky directly by going to the Books app, and you can get it free in your app store. It's Brilliant Biz Book. All one word, all capital B's. We like B's, apparently. Brilliant Biz Book. And then when you're there, click on Ask an Expert, and you'll see Becky Norwood's name. Click on the name and type in the question you have for her, and she'll reply back. I think that's pretty cool.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. All right. So
brilliant.
well, when we take our product and we convert it into a business, we do it right. I think that's what you've been telling us. Okay, so I want to thank you today, Becky, for your wisdom sharing. You are fabulous.
As are you.
It's
amazing. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, and we have so much more to cover in 2 more episodes. Yay!
I don't know if we can get them all done in 2 episodes.
I know, but we're going to have to do it to make it happen. And listeners, we appreciate you listening to the Brilliant Breakthroughs podcast, where you learn about how to create more brilliant breakthroughs for your small business. Shine brightly until next week.